Hey there everybody, Ben here. We're back with another BT13 deck profile. Tonight we're going to be talking about MirageGaogamon. It is a very fun deck. It's a deck that I've been looking forward to playing for a while now since we got the initial leaks for it. It has underwhelmed a whole lot of folks, at least within the first couple weeks of BT13, but I do think this is a deck that has a lot of potential, a lot of powerful combos that it can pull off, and here is my initial version of the deck. I will probably change it around a little bit as the meta progresses, but let me know what you guys think. I'll be linking the photo to the deck profile in the video description below. I'll also be having a screenshot of the deck profile at the end of the video as well. So for the folks who are looking for like a one-shot reference of what my deck looks like, it'll be there for you guys. Thank you guys for watching, and without further ado, let's get into it. Alrighty, so let's get started. In terms of eggs, we are going to be running 4 of our starter deck 8 Demi-Vmon. Inheritable to give +1 KDP if you have 8 or more cards in your hand. A lot of folks will say, well, why not Wanyamon here? I think in the testing that I've done, I feel like Mirage needs to be played as an OTK deck, which a lot of people will focus on the draw power and the consistency, but you have other ways to build up your consistency. I think in terms of the egg, to get full value of it, you're really looking to raise your stack and go for game as best as you can. You try not to raise your stack too early because, you are very subject to removal, particularly in today's meta. So that's why I'm running Demi-Vmon, because you're guaranteed that +1 KDP most of the time. Whereas with Wanyamon, sometimes I feel like you're drawing, but you're drawing too late, and you're really not getting much value out of that. So that's why we're running this egg here. Next, for our level 3s, we are running 4 of our EX4 Gaomon. On play, you and your opponent draw 1 card from your deck, which can come up clutch in the late game, because this technically is an effect that adds cards to your opponent's hand, so a lot of your effects can pop off. Inheritable is also pretty good too. When a card is added to your opponent's hand, you gain a memory, which can help you string along your combo plays and help prolong the resources that you have. So I think both good for the early game, like if it's in your stack, and late game as you're trying to close out the game for that either extra unsuspend, extra memory gain, whatnot, by adding cards to your opponent's hand. So definite 4 of here. I think the best rookie in the deck by far. Next, we're running 4 of your BT11 Gaomon. This acts as your searcher for the deck. You are able to look at your top 3 cards. By looking at your top 3 cards, you're able to pick up 1 card with Gao in name and 1 blue tamer. Pardon me, not Gao, Gaogamon, which is an important distinction, and 1 tamer. So pretty much your staple searcher. Inheritable is not bad either. I think particularly now that we're going to be seeing a lot of Belphamon and a lot of floodgates that are playing, such as Psychmon, Gazimon, whatever. Psych isn't really going to have a huge impact on what you want to do in terms of Mirage, but Gazi can be annoying as it does block memory gain. So when attacking once per turn, if you got a tamer in play, you can go ahead and bounce some of those floodgates, which can then cascade your memory gain. Important thing to note about this card, though, when you are searching, you trash what you don't pick up. Typically, you bottom deck, but for this particular instance, you do have to trash what you don't pick up. But thankfully, most of the times, you'll probably get at least 1 hit out of this. So I think a very important 4 of here, too. Last but not least, we are running 3 of the BT11 Vmon. Again, another why this card question that can be brought up. It's not a Gaomon line card and really doesn't sync up with a lot of what this card wants to do in terms of searching, whatnot. But I will argue that, BT13 Gaomon is not great. BT13 Gaomon basically is when attacking, you can draw a card, which, like I said, most of the time as an OTK deck, you're trying not to play this card and then swing with it. I think if you're in that scenario with BT13 Gao, you're in a pretty rough spot. This card, on the other hand, on play, you get to search top 3 and pick up any blue tamer, which can be huge, right? Because this deck is running and relying heavily on its Thomases. So you really want to find your Thomases as soon as possible and set those up, which VMon will allow you to do as opposed to BT13 Gaomon. BT13 Gaogamon's inheritable is all turns if your opponent has 8 or more cards, you get plus 1k DP, which Belfi can play around, some decks can play around, and is not a bad inheritable by any means, but it's just not consistent enough. Here, I feel like when you play a tamer, you gain a memory, which, again, late game, if you have to slam down one of the new Thomases or just a Thomas in general, this could help you sort of streamline that play, or make that a little bit more efficient to get what you need to get off. So I do like this over BT13 Gaomon, and that's why I kind of threw it in there. So yeah, that's sort of an interesting tech choice that I've been using lately, which has been working to some degree. And that's it for our level 3s. Level 4s, moving on, we're going to be running 4 of our EX4 Gaogamon. I think this is the best level 4 for the deck. When digivolving, you can bounce a level 3 back to your opponent's hand, which is not bad, like I said, in terms of floodgates and whatnot. But I think more importantly, it's inheritable. Similar to its counterpart, EX4 Gaomon. When something is added to your opponent's hand, by effect, you gain a memory. Again, just making your combo plays that much more efficient and giving you the resources to pull off what you need to pull off. So 4 of this guy over here. Next level 4 we're running are 4 of the BT13 Gaogamon. When digivolving, you can play out a Thomas if you don't have one in play already without paying its play cost, which is a good way to just set up your board, right? I think a common play that you can do with this is with one of your searchers, whether it's BT11 Gaomon or BT11 VMon, play it out for 3. If you're able to keep turn and you get a Thomas, great. Go into this guy for 2, play out a Thomas. That's a very cheap way to just get a tamer out, set up your board, and get your tempo going. So this is a pretty good card here. Inheritable is not bad either. Like I mentioned before, it's the same as the BT13 Gaomon, where if your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, you gain plus 1k DP all turns. Not just your turn, not just their turn, but all turns, which, in a DP reduction meta can be very important. So running this at a 4 of, I think pretty decent card here too. And last level 4 we're playing is BT11 Gaogamon. I don't love this card, in all honesty. It's not amazing by any means. But I did want a 9th level 4, and this sort of just fit the bill for it. When attacking, if you have 8 or more cards in hand, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, you gain a memory. Again, you're ideally not swinging with your level 4 if you can help it, so this won't really proc off. It's when attacking, it's just to bounce a level 3 if you have a tamer in play, which again, great, but usually won't proc off either. You could argue, well, why not a hybrid, such as like Lalamon or something like that, or Kumamon even, but I just feel like your tamers tend to become suspended when you're running your combo plays, so there's not a whole lot of room to just hybrid for game if your tamers are suspended, or they're just being played that turn and they have summoning sickness. So I just felt like the hybrid wouldn't do as much as, say, Gaogamon, because at least you can pick this up by searching for him. And that's it for our level 4s. Moving on to our level 5s, we've got 4 of our BT11 Mach Gaogamon. I think a very, very good card because when digivolving, you are able to gain blocker for the rest of your turn and your opponent's turn. And for every 4 cards in hand, you gain plus 2k DP. So for example, say they have 8 cards in hand, this card becomes 11k. And if you go into your level 6, Mirage, it will become a 7k body on the field, which has blocker as well. So not a bad play. You can get a very big blocker on the field. You have your DP gain, which can help counter some of your DP reduction plays like Shine Greymon and whatnot. So Very good card. Inheritable is also very good. When an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you unsuspend. Note that this is all turns as well. So you could potentially block, find a way to get a card in their hand and unsuspend and be able to block again. Also, you are able to just sort of swing, and if you can find a way to get a card back to their hand during their turn, you can unsuspend to keep it safe from being swung over. So there's multiple ways to utilize that, but the all turns effect is a very important distinction, and I think what makes this card very, very good. So running it at a 4 of. Next level 5 we're playing is our EX4 MirageGaogamon. When digivolving, return an opponent's level 4 or lower back to hand. Sort of good for getting rid of your pesky little guys. Inheritable is similar but not exact to BT13 MirageGaogamon, where when attacking once per turn, if your opponent's got 8 or more cards in hand, unsuspend. So synergizes pretty well with your burst mode plays. And with the amount of cards you're bouncing back to your opponent's hands, more often than not, this will proc, which gets you let that extra swing in for that extra aggression. So pretty good card here too. And that rounds out our level 5s. Level 6s, we are playing, 2 of the new BT13 MirageGaogamon. I think it's a pretty decent card. I know it doesn't get a lot of love out there, but, evade is not a bad mechanic. I think, again, with Balfimon, where it has the ability to delete a level 6, you can simply just evade, and if a card is added to their hand, which they do like to do with their draw or whatnot, you can unsuspend by a lot of your level 5 effects, So I do think that this card is not as bad as many people may be making it up to be. When digivolving, you get to also bounce a Tamer, which sometimes when you're playing against Shine Gray, that's all you need to do, right? Is to go into this guy, bounce one of their Marcuses back to hand, and now you've just sort of slowed down their combo plays. So it's not the better of the two MirageGaogamons by any means, but I do think it's an important piece that you can use to your advantage in the right situation. Not a bad card. Also lets you play out a Tamer if you bounce something back to your opponent's hand during all turns. So, again, not a bad way to get your Tamers out and set up sort of your OTK unsuspend plays. So, I think you run it at a 2 of. You can make a case to run it at a 1 of, but I think running it at 2 of for what it can do and also just give you another MirageGaogamon target is important. So, that's that. And last but not least, 4 of this beautiful level 6 here. We are running 4 of the BT11 MirageGaogamon. Insane card. When digivolving, you can bounce a level 5 back to hand. Or if you're not bouncing a level 5, you can bounce top card or security back to their hand. Which, that aggression is great. By bouncing back to hand or adding it to their hand, you're not triggering any security effects, you're not you're not activating an Odin's Breath as well, because you aren't trashing it by effect, you're adding it to their hand, which can be very important in some of those matchups and the decks that are running Odin's Breath. And then all turns, remember that, all turns, when a card is added to your opponent's hand, you gain 1 for every 4. So, no, you are bouncing something back to hand by going into this card. It is a 4 cost, but more often than not, it will probably be a 2 cost. With your inheritables, sometimes you can go into this guy for free, which is huge value because you were able to either bounce a level 5 or a security card, gain memory, and you have a level 6 on board, which can unsuspend if you have the right inheritables. It's just a really good card, right? It is a little bit on the lower end for DP, but, we'll go into that in a little bit. But I think you have to run this at a 4 of. I don't think there's an excuse not to. It's just so good, And even if you don't go into burst mode and you just sort of sit on this guy and wait for your sort of setup play, it's not bad, right? Because now they have to play around its all turns effect. So anything that adds cards to hand, such as an Eismon scatter dying in battle, they draw 3. Well, they've just added 3 cards to hand. Proc effect, right? They search because they can't find their pieces. They picked up something by effect. Memory gain procs off. They play out a Geogreymon they play out, say, like a TK or something, and they add something to hand from security. Proc effect, right? So I think it's just such good value for what it does. Unfortunately, there is no protection. It can be DP reduced, it can be deleted, it can be bounced, but while it's on the field, it forces your opponent to really deal with it, which is why I think it's just such a busted card right now. So running it at a definite 4 of. And then the last Digimon that we're playing here is 4 of your new BT13 MirageGaogamon Burst Mode. Very good card. You can burst Digivolve for 0 by returning a Thomas from play back to your hand. When Digivolving, you can just return one of your opponent's Digimon back to their hand. And then you gain a memory for every 4. So very similar to, if not exactly the same as its level 6, which is you just gain 1 for every 4. So if you can imagine, you go Mirage, they have 8 in hand, you gain 2, go into burst mode, and you gain potentially a 2, but if they cross, say they go from 11 to 12, now you've gained 2, and then you gain 3. So you've gone into your boss monsters. Essentially, they've paid you to go into your boss monster. So very good in terms of memory management and resource management. For the bread and butter of this deck when attacking, and this is not a once per turn, this is every time you attack with this card. If your opponent has 9 or more in hand, you pick at random any card from their hand until they hit 8, and then you bottom deck them, which is crazy, right? Obviously you don't get to choose what cards you get to bottom deck, but at the same time, the fact that you can just bottom deck cards from their hand, restand, and find a way to add cards back to their hand, swing, proc effect again, restand, you can imagine the loop that you're able to do with this card. And you're probably swinging for at least 16, 17k with this. So more often than not, you will be able to just swing over whatever is in security, particularly in today's meta where there aren't as many big security options. But decks like SecCon and whatnot that are very option heavy can be a problem for this deck. You lose the stack, it's sort of a sad day, bad news bears sort of situation, but like I said, more often than not, you should be fine with the DP that you're swinging into. It's just the options that you have to be worried about. But you are able to do this as many times as you need to if you're able to string your combo plays right. So I think very busted card. Some decks will run this at 3. I think 3 is still okay. I personally just wanted it at 4 because the times I played it at 3, I just never saw it. And I was just like waiting to find it, and it just felt really bad. 4, I felt like I was seeing it a good amount of times where I'm like, okay, like I can pull this play off and it'll be fine. But I think if you do want to cut it down, you cut it down to 3, but no less than 3. I think any less than that, you're sort of asking to brick and asking to just be sort of sitting out in the water, vulnerable, because your stack is sort of just left there without protection, Next, in terms of our tamers, we're gonna be running 3 of our new Thomas from BT13. He is your memory setter, so he will set your memory to 3. And during our turn, if there's a Digimon with Gaogamon in its name that's swinging, or Gaomon that's swinging, you can suspend this tamer, and both players draw a card. So if you can imagine, a very good way to get your opponent to that threshold of cards that you need to proc off your burst mode plays to keep looping, that unsuspend bottom decking cycle. Um, of note, I will say for Mirage in general, right, the fact that you're adding so many cards to hand, both for yourself, can be a blessing and a curse in disguise, because for decks that are bricky, you can help them unbrick by letting them draw. So that's what even more reason why I say I think Mirage should be played as an OTK deck and not a grindy deck, because the more resources you give your opponent nowadays, the worse off you are. This can do that, but you need to do it in order to string your combo plays. So I think once you promote, you raise, you go for the combo play, you have to be sure that you can get game. So do make note of that when playing this deck. But we'll continue on with the deck profile. Like I said, 3 Thomases, I think important to play 3. Otherwise, I feel like you won't see them as much. Last but not least, we are running 4 of our BT4 Thomas. 3 cost Tamer to play. On play, you get to trigger draw 1, which can help you search for your pieces as you set up. And then main phase, so you don't have to say start a main. It's just anytime during your main phase. If you have 8 or more cards in your opponent's hand, if you've set it up that way, you can suspend the Tamer to restand one of your Digimon with Gao in name. So, say you get to a point where you can't keep adding cards to their hand, as long as you have them at 8, you can use this Thomas to just keep restanding your burst mode until you can go for game. So this is an excellent way to prolong your combo plays if you're not able to do it simply by forcing them to draw. This card is a way to just do that with 8 in their deck, which burst mode will set them to. So you set them to 8, you aren't able to force them to draw, but you are able to proc this effect to just keep, suspending it to restand, suspend, restand, suspend, restand, which at that point, hopefully you've gotten game at, and that's that. Now, moving on to our options, we are playing 1 of Ice Wall. I think just a staple blue option at this point. Just very good security bomb and control aspect late game. So running 1 Ice Wall, just I feel like you have to at this point. We are running 1 Hammer Spark as well. The deck is tight. I think I would have liked to run 2, but I do want to focus on consistency and finding my pieces. So I think 1 Ice Wall, 1 Hammer Spark is enough in terms of just making them play around that. If it's in your hand, then you can just go ahead, use it, prolong your play, because I think sometimes it's just that 1 memory that you need. So I think 1 Hammer Spark is not bad. And then lastly, running 4 of, like I said, Consistency Way, which is just 4-mem boost. You get to search top 4, and it's a delay gain 2 memory, which sometimes can be clutch, but really you just want to find your pieces. You don't want to mess around and be digging and trying to find ways to dig. You just want to see them, promote your stack, and go for it, which is why I feel like if you're going under that mindset, you play this as a definite 4 of. I don't think you can negotiate any less than 3, in my opinion, if you're playing it this way. I know some people say, well, I get a buy with 2. I think fine at that point. It's just personal preference. But for me, with, how this deck can brick, full disclosure, the deck is prone to bricking just like Shine Gray is. You want to be able to find your pieces, and I think if you're looking for consistency, you just have to max out on your 4-mem boosts. I think you just have to do it. And that is the deck. So I think, again, like I said, I think it is slept on. I think it has underperformed thus far. But it is a very fun deck. Very, very powerful if played out right and you can string your combos along. And I think it has a pretty decent matchup into Belphimon, pretty decent matchup into Shine Greymon, whereas that's probably more of a 50-50, but still pretty decent. And I think it does pretty well, so let me know what you guys think. As I said before, I'm very open to suggestions, comments, feedback on the profile itself, what cards you would add and whatnot. If you like our content, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means a whole lot. So hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.